There was a time when marriage meant something sacred, when two people stood before their families and made a promise that was supposed to last forever. But what happened on this episode of Family Feud tore that idea wide open and left Steve Harvey completely silent. A wife stood at the microphone, smiled at the cameras, and said 5 words that stopped the entire studio cold. "I regret marrying my husband." The audience gasped. Steve Harvey froze. The cameras kept rolling. And what unfolded in the next few minutes would become one of the most talked about moments in the show's entire history. Because the real story was so much deeper, so much more painful, and so much more beautiful than anyone in that room could have predicted. Stay with us, because this one is going to stay with you. The woman at the center of this story was 52-year-old Linda Morales from Houston, Texas. She came to the Family Feud stage wearing a simple blue blouse and sensible shoes, the kind of outfit that said, "I am not here to impress anyone. I am here because my family needs this." Linda had been married to her husband, Raymond, for 27 years. They had 3 grown children, 2 grandchildren, and a small landscaping business that Raymond had built from nothing, starting with a single lawnmower and a beat-up truck in 1998. From the outside, their life looked like a success story, a hard-working immigrant family that had made something out of almost nothing. But the people watching from home had no idea what was really going on inside that family. Raymond, now 55, had suffered a severe stroke 18 months before the taping. He had lost most of the movement on his right side, his speech was slow and difficult, and the man who had once worked 12-hour days in the Texas sun now needed help getting dressed in the morning. The medical bills had swallowed their savings whole. The landscaping business, the one Raymond had poured 3 decades of his life into, was falling apart without him there to run it. Their oldest son, Marco, was trying to hold the business together while also working his own full-time job. Their daughter, Sophia, had moved back home to help care for Raymond. And Linda, the woman standing on the Family Feud stage, had not had a single day off in 18 months. She cooked, cleaned, managed the finances, drove Raymond to every therapy appointment, and sat beside his bed every night making sure he was okay. She had given up her part-time job at a dental office to be his full-time caregiver. She had given up her Tuesday night book club, her Sunday morning walks, and the small moments of peace that had kept her going for decades. She had given up herself. The Family Feud appearance had been Marco's idea. He had entered the family into the show's lottery over a year ago, before Raymond's stroke, just for fun. When they actually got the call saying they had been selected, everyone in the family assumed they would decline. But Linda had surprised them all. "We are going," she had said quietly. "We need the money, and your father would want us to go." And Raymond had squeezed her hand and nodded slowly when she told him. That nod was the most important thing she had packed for the trip. The Morales family, Linda, Marco, Sophia, and 2 cousins, walked onto the Family Feud stage looking like exactly what they were, a family that had been through the fire together. They were warm with each other, quick to laugh, and clearly close. The audience loved them immediately. Steve Harvey, doing what he does better than almost anyone on television, started working the room. He chatted with Marco about the landscaping business. He teased Sophia about moving back home. He asked Linda how long she had been married. 27 years, she said. 27 years, Steve repeated, turning to the audience with his signature grin. "No, that right there is a testament. Most people can't last 27 minutes. What's your secret?" The audience laughed. The family laughed. And Linda smiled, a real smile, warm and complicated, the kind that holds more than one feeling at the same time. "I'll tell you the secret in a minute," she said. "But first, let me tell you something I've never said out loud before." Steve tilted his head. The audience got quiet. "I regret marrying my husband." The studio went absolutely still. Steve Harvey, a man who has hosted thousands of episodes and handled every kind of surprise imaginable, stood motionless, his mouth opened slightly. He looked at Linda. He looked at Marco and Sophia. He looked back at Linda. Linda was still smiling, but her eyes had filled with tears. "I regret marrying him," she said again, more softly this time, "because I didn't know. I could not have known that marrying him would mean spending 27 7 years watching someone love you so completely that it changes who you are. And I wasn't ready for that. I was never ready for that. No one prepares you for what it feels like to be loved by a good man for that long. The audience exhaled all at once. Several people started crying before Linda even continued. Raymond had his stroke 18 months ago, she said, her voice steady now. And every single day since then, I have gotten up and I have taken care of him. Not because I have to. Because he spent 27 years taking care of me in ways I didn't even notice until they were gone. He made my coffee every morning without being asked. Every single morning for 27 years. He knew I liked it with just a little bit of sugar and a lot of milk, and he never once got it wrong and never once made me feel like I needed to thank him for it. That's just who he was. Steve Harvey had gone completely still. He was not playing a character. He was not performing empathy. He was simply listening, the way you listen when someone is saying something true. After the stroke, Linda continued, the doctors asked me if I wanted to talk to a social worker about what it means to care for someone long term. And I remember thinking, what do you mean, what it means? It means he's my husband. It means I love him. What else is there to know? She paused and looked down at her hands. What I didn't realize was that I had stopped taking care of myself. I stopped eating properly. I stopped sleeping. I stopped calling my friends. I stopped being Linda. I was just Raymond's caregiver. And one night, about 6 months in, I sat down on the kitchen floor at 2 in the morning and I cried for an hour. Not because I was sad he was alive. Because I was scared of how much I loved him and how much it hurt to watch him struggle. She looked up at Steve directly. That's when I regretted it. Not marrying him. Regretted that I hadn't loved him louder while he was healthy. That I hadn't told him every single day what he meant to me. That I had assumed we would always have more time. Mom Marco had his arm around his mother. Sophia had her face buried in her hands. Even the opposing family on the other side of the stage was visibly moved. Steve Harvey took a long breath. He stepped closer to Linda, and then, in a voice much quieter than his usual stage voice, he said, "Can I ask you something personal?" Linda nodded. "Does Raymond know you feel this way?" Linda shook her head slowly. Then she smiled through her tears. "That's why we're here, Mr. Harvey. Because Marco thought that maybe, if we came on national television, I might finally say the things I should have been saying all along." What happened next had absolutely nothing to do with the game. Steve Harvey turned to his producers and held up one hand. He spoke quietly to someone off camera. The audience waited, completely silent, sensing that something unusual was happening. Then Steve turned back to the family and said, "I want to do something we have never done on this show, and I need the Morales family to be okay with it." He looked at Linda. She nodded without hesitation. What the audience didn't know, what the Morales family hadn't been told, was that the show's producers had been in contact with Raymond's physical therapist for the past week. When Marco had submitted the application, he had included a letter explaining his father's condition and what this appearance meant to their family. That letter had made its way to Steve Harvey's desk personally, and Steve Harvey had made a phone call. A side door to the studio opened. Raymond Morales, 55 years old, moving slowly with a cane and wearing a dark blazer that Sophia had pressed for him the night before, walked onto the Family Feud stage. Linda's hand went to her mouth. Marco stood up straight, tears already falling. Sophia made a sound that was half laugh, half sob. Raymond walked, slowly, with great effort, but steadily, toward his wife. The audience had risen to its feet before he was even halfway across the stage. When he reached Linda, he stopped. He was breathing hard from the effort. His right hand trembled slightly at his side. But his eyes were completely clear. He spoke slowly, because speaking was still hard for him, because the stroke had taken that ease away from him, but the words were real and they were his. "I heard you," he said. "I always heard you." Linda broke completely. She stepped forward and put her arms around him, and Raymond held her as best he could with his good arm, and the two of them stood there in the middle of the Family Feud stage, while 200 people in the studio audience wept openly, and Steve Harvey stood to the side with his hand over his heart, not saying a single word, because some moments do not need commentary. When they finally separated, Raymond turned to look at Steve. Speaking slowly, choosing each word carefully, he said, "She makes my coffee now. Not as good as mine." The studio erupted in laughter through the tears, the kind of laughter that only happens when something has already broken you open and then offered you something gentle. Steve Harvey laughed too, and then he did something that almost no one in television does. He let the silence come back. He let the moment breathe. He did not rush to the next segment or make a joke to deflect the emotion. He just stood there, present, in the middle of what was happening. After a long moment he said, "Linda Morales, I have hosted this show for a long time. I have seen people win money and lose money and laugh and cry and say things they probably regretted, but I have never, not once, seen someone come onto this stage and be that honest, that brave. And I want you to know something Raymond already knew. That man already knew everything you just said, because a woman who shows up every single day for 18 months, that's not regret. That's the deepest kind of love there is." The Morales family won their game that day. It wasn't even close. They played with the kind of easy, joyful energy that comes when the pressure of unexpressed things has finally been released. Linda was laughing by the end. Raymond, watching from a special seat that had been set up for him off to the side of the stage, smiled every time she got an answer right. They won 12,000, but that was the smallest thing that happened to them that day. When the episode aired 6 weeks later, the clip of Linda's speech, and Raymond walking through that side door, went viral within hours. Not the kind of viral that fades in a day, the kind that stays. The clip was shared millions of times across every platform, and the comments were not the usual noise of the internet. They were letters. People writing paragraphs about their own marriages, their own regrets, their own moments of realizing too late, or just in time what they had. A woman in Ohio wrote that she had been planning to ask her husband for a divorce that same week, and watching Linda's video made her pick up the phone and call him instead. They went to therapy. They are still together. A man in Georgia wrote that his wife had died 2 years earlier, and that watching Raymond walk through that door was the closest he had felt to her since the funeral. He said he sat and cried for an hour, and that it helped him more than anything had in 2 years. A couple in their 70s from Arizona sent a handwritten letter to the Family Feud producers that simply said, "Thank you for reminding us why we stayed." The Morales family used the prize money to hire a part-time assistant for the landscaping business, which gave Marco enough breathing room to actually run it properly. Within 4 months, they had stabilized the company. Within 8 months, they had taken on 3 new commercial contracts. Raymond began attending the office twice a week, not to do the physical work, but to manage client relationships, to be the voice and the face of the business he had built with his hands. It turned out that his relationships with clients were so strong that many of them had simply been waiting for him to come back. Raymond's speech continued to improve, slowly, carefully, with enormous effort and the help of a dedicated speech therapist. He got more of himself back. He would never fully return to the man he had been before the stroke. That man was gone, and the family had learned to grieve him while celebrating the man who remained. But Raymond Morales at 55, moving slower and speaking more deliberately, was still Raymond Morales, still kind, still funny in that quiet way that caught you off guard, still making the coffee every morning. One morning, about a year after the taping, Sophia came downstairs to find both of her parents in the kitchen. Raymond was standing at the counter, moving slowly but purposefully, measuring out the coffee. Linda was sitting at the table watching him. Sophia stopped in the doorway. She didn't say anything. She just watched her father hand her mother a mug, a little bit of sugar, a lot of milk, not quite as good as before, but close enough, and her mother wrap both hands around it and look up at him the way you look at someone when you know exactly what they cost and exactly what they are worth. Steve Harvey talked about the Morales family in interviews for months afterward. He said that in all his years in entertainment, he had never been more grateful for a moment of television than that one. He said Raymond walking through that door was one of the few times in his career that he had genuinely not known what to do. Not as a host, not as a performer, but as a human being who was witnessing something real. That's what this show is about, he said. Not the answers on the board, the answers in the room. Linda Morales became an unexpected voice for family caregiver awareness. She didn't seek it out. It came to her through the flood of messages from people who recognized themselves in what she had said. She started sharing small updates on social media, honest, quiet posts about what it was like to care for someone you love, about the importance of asking for help, about the danger of disappearing into service and forgetting to stay present as a person. Her message was always the same, said in different ways: don't wait to say the things. Don't assume more time. Don't love quietly when you can love loud. The Morales family returned to Family Feud for a holiday special the following year. This time Raymond was on stage with them, seated at a specially arranged podium, participating in the game. He was slower than the other players, and the audience waited for him with complete patience whenever it was his turn. He got 2 answers right. The second one, when asked to name something a husband does every morning, he answered without hesitation, makes the coffee. The studio went wild. Steve Harvey, for the second time in 2 appearances with this family, had to stop the taping because he was laughing too hard to continue. 3 years after that first appearance at a small anniversary dinner for their family. No cameras, no audience, just the people who had been there through all of it. Linda stood up to say a few words. Marco and Sophia expected something about gratitude or faith, or the year they had been through. What she said instead was shorter than any of that. She looked at Raymond and she said, "I regret nothing." And then she sat back down and let him take her hand. This story is a reminder that the most important things are often the things we forget to say out loud. Raymond and Linda Morales did not have a perfect marriage. They had a real one, full of hard years and quiet sacrifices and things left unsaid for too long. What made their moment on Family Feud so powerful was not that Linda said something extraordinary. It was that she finally said something true. The people in your life deserve to hear what they mean to you. Not someday. Today.